Chapter 7, A Mustard Seed, 2007. Meanwhile, I remained steadfast to crafting my product. As I pondered positive thoughts about the work atmosphere I was hoping to attain, I wrote them in my prayers. I asked God to bring into my life a job that would not consume my life or stress me out. Through some acquaintances, I was warned about the economy and how challenging it was going to be to find a job. I heard that there weren't as many administrative jobs like it used to be, but I did not allow any opinions or comments from others to divert me from pursuing what I had envisioned. I believed that I could ask God for His best because I had surrendered to the call on my life. I held on to the visions and dreams that were shown to me. The times when I would get weary, I searched the Holy Bible for scriptures on words to uplift me. I came across the book of Joshua in the Old Testament and read the formula to success. Joshua chapter 1 verses 8 and 9. While reading the Bible verses, I put myself in Joshua's shoes. I declared success over my life day and night through the power of prayer. I had hoped that things would be different this time between Sister Hopewell and me. She introduced me to another woman that was her Christian friend. While we were on the phone, I felt a little better talking to Sister Strong while she shared her testimony. During the time, I was hoping to find a good job, but I was feeling the ups and downs from week to week. I welcomed the encouragement and prayers while I was waiting on God to answer my prayers. Around 3 weeks later, I received some feedback regarding a contracts position that I applied for. I had 2 interviews before I was offered the job. I felt excited and grateful that God turned my financial situation around in little time. Before starting the position, I prayed these words, "Please, Lord, let this be the job that I prayed for." The first day on the job, I sat with my trainer. She was younger than I was and seemed very candid. As she went over the different tasks and forms, she eventually expressed her feelings about the position. She was disappointed when she was overlooked for the position. However, I felt her frustration and, on the other hand, some tension as well. I was keeping a mental note of everything. The second day, I was able to see the bigger picture. I was hired to support the sales team and CEO of a construction company. My contracts experience qualified me for being the chosen candidate. On the third day, I started to feel uncomfortable about things. There were still more details to cover for the sales part of the position before I could meet with the CEO to discuss my role in assisting him. That same afternoon, I was able to sit at my desk. I decided to arrange the desk to accommodate how I would like things. I wanted to get organized so that I could be ready to start working on my own. I felt confident because I took notes during the training. During the remainder of the working day, I sat with the CEO to learn the other part of my job. We discussed his agenda and some of the job duties that I would be assisting him with. His credenza was covered with piles of paper. According to the conversation we had, he needed help with organizing his paperwork and worked close as his right hand. Again, that uncomfortable feeling that I felt started to grow stronger. After our meeting was over, I went to the ladies' room to say a prayer. I stood before the mirror while I washed my hands. I snapped out of the trance as I made my way back to my desk. I tried to suppress how I was feeling by telling myself it's not that bad. The young lady that was training me stopped by my desk before leaving for the day. She had a strange look on her face that prompted me to ask her whether everything was okay. She pleaded with me to not say a word, and I assured her that I wouldn't say anything. She quietly whispered to me that I should be assertive. I asked her what she meant by that, and she said that I needed to be more assertive, expressive, and talkative. I knew for sure that something was going on. I've heard the word assertive on many occasions in my career. It brought back a flash from the past when I was temping on an assignment and I wanted to go permanent, but I did not exhibit assertiveness. I calmly looked her in the eyes while listening to what else she had to say. The CEO asked her how was the training going with me, and he expressed his thoughts about my personality to her. Before leaving work, I went back to the washroom and stared in the mirror. I whispered to myself, there are still some hills I have to climb. I washed my hands and grabbed a paper towel and left. That was a defining moment for me to reach my decision to resign. I kept a smile on my face and remained polite. Since making the decision to resign, I felt instant relief. I thought at first that I was going to support the sales team, department, and review contracts for liquidated and consequential damages. However, I did figure out the plan. I was going to support the CEO and the sales team. I knew that in no time I would get burned out. During the remainder of the week, I was actually able to laugh and have small conversations with my trainer. We realized that we had to be discreet so that the other coworkers did not get suspicious. Since I felt that she was kind toward me and patient throughout the process, I wanted her to know what I thought. I candidly expressed to her that she would be the best candidate for the position. She was flattered by it, but expressed that she lacked having any contracts experience. The same week on Friday, about an hour before quit time, I confided in her that I was considering my resignation. She reacted with shock toward me and tried to convince me to reason why I should think it over. I saw her point and explained to her that I believed it was for the best. Therefore, we swapped phone numbers at work, and I called her that evening. She gave me the name of the employment agency that found her the job. I promised her that if I did not return to work that following Monday, I would resign over the phone and recommend her for the position. The next day, I took a long drive to one of my favorite spots outside of Chicago, downtown Oak Park. It was a beautiful sunny day. I had breakfast outside one of the eateries on Lake Street while watching the pedestrians walk along the sidewalks. While sitting there eating, I decided that it would be nice to have some company, so I called my friend Marco. I had grown to appreciate having friends that are pursuing their calling too. I knew that it wouldn't be long before he got there because he was only a train ride away. Once Marco arrived, we sat and shared some of our struggles about life's ups and downs. Afterward, we walked around to visit the different shops while enjoying some Cold Stone creamy ice cream. I felt free as a bird that day walking the streets of downtown Oak Park. There was a huge smile on my face. I felt the laughter in my heart as I fell in love with the warmth of the sun. As I paused to listen to my heart, I knew that there would be more hills and mountains that I would have to climb before I could find financial stability. However, I was relieved in knowing that I made enough money to pay next month's rent. After contemplating about the conversation I had with the trainer on Friday evening, I decided to send an email on Sunday evening to the CEO to inform him that I was resigning. I also recommended my trainer for the position and highlighted her strengths in my letter. I concluded what those hunches were signifying. As I often dreaded looking within, I felt it was a sign to warn me. I perceived that the company and the position were not a good match for me. I knew that I did not want to work for someone that was not confident in my abilities and comfortable with my personality. My persona was something that I considered an integral part of my makeup, and I'm shaped by my life experiences. I could not put a monetary price on exchanging it to become something that I was not naturally. Again, I got back on the saddle to ride the horse in search of work. I made appointments to enlist with several temporary agencies. I took various tests hoping to qualify for work. I prayed that my phone would start ringing for opportunities. Step by step, I put my faith into action, and I believed I was doing the right thing by quitting my job because I knew that things weren't right there and realized that it was only a matter of time before it surfaced. Meanwhile, during my employment breaks, I continued to write inspirations. I managed to stay connected to people that supported my vision. I'm sure that my trials and tests were compelling them to see what the outcome was going to be. While driving one morning to a recruitment office, there was a massive size of birds flying and singing. As they flew past me, I felt peaceful and positive. that I was heading somewhere. After arriving to my appointment, I met with a staffing representative. I was open to listening to some constructive criticism for improving my chances of securing work. The permanent side of the staffing agency worked hard at critiquing my resume, and they offered some other possible tips and pointers to assist me in becoming a strong candidate. However, I was open minded about the economy and flexible with the salary. I could say one thing for sure: while being without a job for a year and a half, it was humbling. I had learned to know what it felt like to live on a shoestring budget and have just enough money to meet my needs. At the time, I could not afford to turn down work that I felt was beneath me. I had to hit the pavement hard, learn fast what I could accept and what I would decline. The low paying jobs were plenty, therefore, it made the process easier for me to see that I had to focus primarily on the duties and the distance I would have to travel. After I finished testing, I was hoping to hear if there were some job opportunities. However, due to the application process, mine was not completed until the employment and reference check was done. Therefore, I wasn't clear to start work yet. As I gathered my things to leave, I waited for the elevator. Once the elevator doors opened, I got in, and behind me was an African American woman. While riding down to the lobby, she noticed that I was holding the agency's card in my hand. Then she politely introduced herself to me. Natasha actually worked for the agency as well, but on the temporary side, and was leaving for lunch. Somehow the conversation just flowed as I asked her if there were any temporary positions available. She replied that there was one, but the position was seeking someone that had contracts experience. My eyes got big as I quickly replied that I had contracts experience. She gave a brief overview about the position and expressed that it was a challenging position and it was hard to keep someone there on the assignment. She expressed that the company's software was not user-friendly or a standard Windows program. I needed to navigate through many screens to understand the process along with 2 weeks of training. I did not allow it to intimidate me. I expressed that I was eager and very interested. She paused and took my name and expressed that she would be in touch after she reviewed my application. I suddenly felt God's favor and believed that was a divine connection. I left feeling even more optimistic. Later that day, I received a call from Natasha offering me the contract's temporary position. She said the assignment could last 3 months. When I hung up the phone, I started thanking God for his love and favor. I knew that he was able to help me if I continued to seek. As I prepared to start my new assignment, I asked God to help me learn the software that I was forewarned about. I had done software training at different temp jobs in the past, but this time I needed an income. Therefore, I did not back down from the challenge. The first day on the assignment, it seemed pleasant working for a mosquito company. My years of temping had afforded me many opportunities to work at places I would have never dreamed of. Since journeying down the temp path, I had acquired new skills and gained self-confidence to move past many barriers. The manager that facilitated the training did not seem receptive toward me. I did not make waves or arrive late for work. I made it my business to walk on eggshells to hold onto the assignment. As time went by, I felt certain that I was being singled out by the manager. I was sure of it the day the training ended. While sitting at our computers in the training room, the manager passed out the new material that gave instructions on how to enter the codes and print screens to illustrate the steps when using the program. When she made it over to my workstation, she replied that she didn't think I was going to make it. I politely smiled as I reached for my packet. That was a sign indicating what I felt was possibly true. After leaving work that day, I went home and asked God why this woman felt uncomfortable with me. I did not want to emphasize that it may be because she was overweight. I thought about the process of elimination by ruling out that it was not a race thing because there was another African American woman besides me that she treated differently. There was only one Caucasian woman in training, with us, and she was given favor because her son worked for the company. Later, I learned that my manager had gone through a divorce and was a single mother as well. The rumor was she had gained approximately 80 pounds since her divorce. I could imagine having gone through such a life altering event could trigger her eating impulses and low self esteem. A few weeks had passed, and the other African American woman started taking off work and arriving late. She confided in me that she was seeking a permanent job elsewhere. She was not willing to work indefinitely on the assignment. However, she was the favorite in the group. She learned the processes fairly quick. Whenever someone would get stuck on a part, she was able to assist. She explained that the concept to the training wasn't that hard for her because she had some similar experience before, and by nature she caught on to things pretty fast. One day, my coworker was out of the office. When I heard the news, I assumed that she was away on an interview. It was the other woman and myself there to manage the workload. While picking up the new applications to process for the day, the manager stopped me to apologize for prejudging me. I replied humbly, "Thank you." I was shocked to hear her confession. Again, it only assured me that God was with me. I received a call from Sister Strong letting me know to be encouraged, and because she seemed humble, we talked about our purpose and desire to serve God. I didn't mind sending her some inspirations. During the call, I did not know that she was over to Sister Hopewell's visiting. Before the call ended, she requested if I could send the package to Sister Hopewell's address. I agreed because I never held grudges. I had learned to let go of the past by thinking that maybe Sister Hopewell was selling my bookmarks. I did truly let it go. I waited patiently to hear back from Sister Strong whether she had received her bookmarks. Several days had passed, and I received a call from Sister Hopewell asking me about the package and if I had a tracking number. I told her no because I did not pay the extra charge to track the package I sent. Several days later, around 9 p.m., Sister Strong called me. When I said hello, I did not know that Sister Hopewell was already on the phone call. By the greeting from Sister Strong, I immediately felt a difference in her voice, but I remained cordial and quiet. While listening, I heard Sister Hopewell in the background. Sister Hopewell told me that my package was ruined and asked me what happened. At first, I thought that maybe I should have gotten some insurance because I did not think of the package getting damaged. I wrapped the bookmarks in bubble wrap and placed them inside a large bubble envelope. The bookmarks were also packaged individually inside a plastic sleeve. It did not bother me to decline the insurance because I could easily replace the bookmarks if necessary. As I sat there to listen, the conversation was not going well. I was amazed and shocked because it was the first time that anything like it had ever happened. Everyone got quiet on the call, and the next thing I knew, Sister Hopewell started telling me that if I were not running behind a man, this would have never happened. I should get my nose from out of the mess and get back in obedience with God. At that point, I tried to explain myself and wondered what the big deal really was. Since I could tell that I wasn't getting anywhere and the snide remarks were about me, I went into defense mode and my blood started boiling. I started thinking that this was the last time that they would attack me. I opened my eyes and was able to see Sister Hopewell for who she really was and Sister Strong by association. While Sister Hopewell was talking, Sister Strong was humming and saying amen. I was everything but a child of the King. Sister Hopewell even threw in the conversation about when she sent me the realm of paper and how low down I was for letting the package go back to California. Well, that concluded what I had thought about her. Therefore, she did realize that I was not as naive as she thought. I finished the call by saying that we are all sinners according to the Bible and saved by grace. If the blood of Jesus cannot set me free, then I am a slave to my sins, and this faith thing is all in vain. The race is long, and as long as I'm on this side of heaven, I still have to finish my race. No one can say what one would not do, because the race is given neither to the swift nor to the strong, but the one who endures to the end. I felt empowered as I realized the words that I had spoken. I kindly hit the release button. My soul ties with Sister Hopewell and Sister Strong were finally severed. I prayed to God to destroy the spiritual yoke between us and to send His peace in the matter. I understood that there is no man that can put me in heaven or hell but Jesus. I realized that my destiny was not connected to having people in my life that continue to manipulate, and deceive the work of God for my life. I understood that I was not saved by works, and God did not call me to be Jesus, but to emulate His character and to have a relationship with Him. Sometimes having Christian friends can create a feeling of enrichment. On the other hand, we may become so connected to one another by our testimonies, gifts, and sharing the word, but the minute you reveal or confide some of the sins that you're struggling with, things seem to change. The unconditional love is tossed out the window, and you are on the mercy seat awaiting judgment. The bottom line is that I have to run my own race, and I had always known that my sins were ever before me. The Bible speaks about these things. Somehow it must be true as I struggle daily to bring my flesh under submission. Since knowing the calling on my life and having spiritual gifts did not take away my sins, I was still accountable for the things I sold, and I must still run the race of faith and repent when my soul gets entangled with the lust and evil that ensnares me. At last, Jacob was out of school for the summer. I sent him to visit his brother JR in Ames, Iowa, for a month. It was time for me to concentrate on finding balance and hearing from God. The sun was shining brightly and the flowers were in bloom. Since I had some free time, I pondered about visiting New York City. I had two friends that relocated there that lived in Syracuse and Rochester. After paying all my bills and living on a tight budget for so long, I checked Amtrak to see if I could afford the trip. I purchased a round trip ticket to leave the weekend of the 4th of July. Sometimes it's crucial to let go of trying to predict how everything is going to happen. By getting away, I felt that it would free my mind of the many things that had plagued me. I was excited about the long train ride and was hoping it would evoke more inspirations. I desired to move from my apartment because some strange things were happening. At first, I wasn't paying close attention, but it progressed over time. I believed someone was entering my apartment. I complained to the rental office and they changed the locks and gave me different keys. However, they were recycling the keys to the apartments and giving them to other tenants that lived there. I felt strongly that it was someone in maintenance that cared for the apartments. Majority of the time, it's an inside person when things continue to happen. I've learned that if you do something repetitively, it is easier for the perpetrator to detect your behavior. During the times when I was dating Paul, I didn't spend a lot of time at my apartment on the weekends. The first sign revealed that my car wasn't parked outside on certain days. If there was someone watching, he or she wasn't too far away while studying the situation. When I was aware of it, their plan was already in motion. There was an incident when I had planned to be away for the entire weekend. I had cleaned everything on my kitchen counter neatly. I placed things the way I like seeing them. When I returned home, I walked into my kitchen and noticed that my ceramic candy dish was moved. The top that sits on the bowl was removed and sitting apart. I left the lid on top and the bowl was pushed back against the counter. I started thinking about my surroundings and my routine. On another occasion, when I opened my front door, I noticed my scarf was lying at the door, which freaked me out. I retraced the last time I remember wearing it, and things weren't making sense at all. I desired to move since knowing someone was watching me. These things were happening after my locks were changed. I prayed to God because I refused to live in fear. I trusted that God would keep me through all things to fulfill the plan that was destined for my life. Yet, I was uncertain about a lot of things, since majority of the things I needed required money. I called my prayer warriors and asked for prayer. I started searching on the internet for a new apartment. I found one that appealed to me in price and was adjacent to where Emery lived. I drove out to visit the apartments. I was curious and wondered why the rent was below the market price. The apartments looked beautiful from what I could tell, and the clubhouse was huge and the decor was tasteful. The owner was renovating the apartments at the time. I didn't want to leave there wandering, so I decided to apply for an apartment. While filling out the application, the process seemed long and unusual. It was not your typical procedure when you apply for an apartment. I asked the rental consultant what was going on since there were so many families applying to live there. She informed me that the property was governed by the state to rent to families with a certain income. However, it was not a Section 8 program, but it was some type of housing program that assisted in offering families a chance to live in the suburbs. Therefore, I submitted my application and was given an option to pick an apartment and given a move-in date. I filled out all the paperwork as if there was nothing out of order in my life. My only source of income was my indefinite temp assignment. After completing the application and paying the application fee, I received a copy of the paperwork with a receipt of the credit check. The background check and some other information were pending approval. I politely stood up to give the woman a handshake and thanked her for her time. I was praying softly to myself as I walked to my car. I was bold with my request, and God knew the extreme of my hopes, dreams, and fears. I cried as I merged onto the freeway and started praising God for my apartment. The following week, I wanted to eat lunch alone. I needed to stay focused on my situation. When I needed prayer, I asked certain people, but for inspiration, I sought quiet time alone, and sometimes I wrote something or listened to an inspiring audio CD, read a good positive book among being outdoors close to nature. There was a beautiful park nearby, the place of my job, that I would walk to. While walking, I would ponder and release my thoughts into the universe. As I watched the birds fly high and low, I enjoyed gazing at the fishing pond. On some days, my coworker would ask me if I had plans for lunch. Sometimes it's cool to sit and socialize, but after a while, I did like having my space. I didn't want to be rude by saying that I like to be alone sometimes. She didn't care to walk during lunchtime. She would complain about the heat and getting sweaty. I was happy and excited when it did not work out for her. I was in a place in my life where I needed direction and a change, and with each act of faith, I planted seeds and made it a point to talk to God periodically throughout my day. Although things looked like they were on shaky ground, I prayed and my mind had not changed about New York. As I prepared to leave for New York, I knew that my financial situation wasn't stable. While riding the Amtrak, I wanted to amuse my thoughts with the scenery. It was exciting to me knowing that I was able to travel on a shoestring budget. I knew that it was because God made a way. I traveled through the night and cuddled myself into my blanket thrower. I tuned out the noise that was coming from the other passengers. Finally, I made it to my stop, Syracuse. It was refreshing to see my friend waiting for me at the train station. Samaria was from Belize, and we went back to the days when we worked at World USA. We connected through sharing a mutual love for inspiration, and her motto is, always remember to celebrate you. She seemed to always give me that little burst of hope and joy. My heart will always be grateful to Samaria for having such a sweet presence that exudes light. Some people have it, and when they cross my path, I know how to embrace it. Her husband complimented her in many ways through his kindness and hospitality. While having such a wonderful time eating, bonding, and watching movies, she offered to take me to New York City during my stay. We agreed on what day would be best, and the plan was set in motion. When we arrived in New York City, it was definitely everything that I had seen on TV. There was flair and hustle going on while being in the center of Times Square. The parking was outrageous. There were crowds of people walking along the sidewalks. The big screen TVs and billboards caught my attention. The traffic was crazy and the cab drivers were the worst. There were bells and whistles going off all around me. I was excited to start walking. It was like looking at a blockbuster movie on film. I saw the Statue of Liberty, and the river seemed endless in sight. We ate lunch at Bubblegum Shrimp Restaurant and made our way over to the Canal Street to hang out and do some dream shopping. I couldn't resist buying a few purses and other small knickknacks. The Lord knew that I needed to hold on to my change. It was wild and fast as we visited different vendors. The place would give you a rush if you can stand crowds. I call the place New York's finest outlet of knockoffs. Our next stop was Brooklyn. Samaria was going to pick up her goddaughter that lived in Brooklyn. There were many sights to see as I stared in the faces of different people while absorbing the scenic and sunshine. When we crossed the Brooklyn Bridge, I did not know what to expect. There were piles of trash bags of garbage lying near the curb on the streets. The smell of hot trash was disgusting. It had a sad stench. I was amazed at how the people were living there. It seemed as if the world had forgotten that part of New York. It made me feel appreciative for having an open mind to take risks and venture out into the world. Some people naturally conform to what they know and are afraid of change and possibilities. The next day, Samaria took me over to Charlotte's, my other friend that lived in Rochester. I was able to sit for a while and have dinner before catching the last train heading to Illinois that evening. Charlotte was a talker. I think she had me beat. Around 22 years ago, we shared a hospital room after giving birth to our first child. While in the hospital at the time, I enjoyed her humor and hearing her Chicago stories. She was a very amusing person. I remember the times when I laughed so hard that it would hurt. I enjoyed the wonderful dinner she prepared for me. The dessert was a strawberry cheesecake, and it was delightful. I had the chance to enjoy my goddaughter as well. There was a lot to see in 3 days. The memories will always be with me. On the train ride home, I had the time to reflect over the things that I had experienced. I left New York with many images in my mind. The whole experience made me think about how blessed I was. The adventure was different, and it inspired me to believe in my dreams more. At times in my life, I felt impoverished, but after taking in all the images of the people that I saw walking the streets of New York, I was able to see hundreds of homeless people and people from middle income and some affluent groups. Everyone seemed to be in a rush, perhaps going nowhere, or was not aware of the next person walking beside them. It was obvious to me that the world could grow cold and dim, even worse if you lose hope in yourself. Although I had no idea how things were going to pan out for me back home, I was still grateful in knowing that I had a temp job. It was better than not having any job or income, but all I knew was that I had to get back into the game of life. The train arrived around mid-morning on the 4th of July. I had the chance to spend time with Emery on the 4th as well. He had a small barbecue and his family came over for a little while. I didn't stay late after we watched 2 movies because I wanted to get some rest. The next day, when I arrived to work, the manager was not at her desk. The procedure was to check in with her daily before starting the work. When she saw me there was a puzzled look on her face, as if I had given her a shock. I had no idea at first why she looked puzzled, until she asked me for my badge. I politely gave her my badge, and then I asked her what was happening, and her response was that my assignment ended. But I thought to myself, if the assignment was officially over, the agency should have called me before I returned to work, and why was my badge not deactivated? I replied, okay, and left. When I got back to my car, I called the agency to confirm the news. I was a little pissed by the fact the agency had not called me. As a matter of fact, I remember feeling sleepy and very tired that morning from the trip to New York. I would have enjoyed sleeping in after hearing the news. My assignment was officially over. I expressed to Natasha how the manager treated me. She assured me that she was going to speak to the manager concerning the matter. I knew that it was a little late, and that's water under the bridge, but I wanted to vent my feelings since I no longer had to walk on eggshells. Now where do I turn from here? I thought to myself, since the highs from the trip was over and no word on my apartment application. I asked the Lord, what does he have planned for me, because things were not looking good. I contacted the leasing consultant who was handling my application. She said the background check came back clear and the last thing was employment verification. Suddenly, I felt tense. I thought to myself, Lord, I do not know how you're going to work this one out. I did not disclose to her that my temporary assignment had ended. I politely asked how much longer before I get an answer. She replied, hopefully by the end of the week. However, her days off were Tuesdays and Thursdays. I kindly said thank you. The time was winding down, and I did not have many options. After speaking to one of my cousins regarding the matter, she encouraged me to start packing. She said, aren't you moving? And if so, I needed to get packed. As an act of faith, I called the storage to inquire on the cost for their monthly rental. I arranged a trip to the storage place to see the size of storage that I might need in case I had to store some of my things. While there, I also picked up some boxes. I remember the day as if it happened yesterday. It was a beautiful summer, sunny day. Some days later, my Aunt Vanessa came to visit for a weekend. She was accompanying a friend that came to town to conduct some business. I did not physically have the strength or energy to start packing. My aunt stepped in and assisted me with the packing for a few hours. It was the kickstart that I needed. We accomplished some major work in such little time. It was perfect timing. The sight of boxes that I had packed sparked the motivation that I needed to persevere. I bought a Sunday newspaper. As I browsed the paper for work, I saw an ad from an employment agency announcing their open house for new jobs. It listed several positions and the pay rate. The salaries caught my eye. As I stared at the ad, I immediately cut the ad out of the paper and placed it on my planner. The following day, I called Natasha to see if there was any available work. I prayed for an assignment because I had given Natasha's agency name as my employer on my rental application. I did not know how it would affect my chances of getting the apartment if I was not working. However, there were no assignments available, but I remained proactive by calling in daily and expressing my availability for work. I felt that it would enhance my chances of being considered for work over any other candidate. During my job search, my dream for pursuing my business was at a standstill. My primary focus was on securing a permanent job and a place to live. My complete attention was pursuing an income. I attended the employment agency's open house from the ad that I had seen in the newspaper. Once I got there, the pressure was on, and I needed to step out boldly in faith. I passed all my tests and interviewed with one of the recruiting managers. She was eager to discuss some job opportunities with me. She asked me to wait in the waiting room while she prepared some additional paperwork that I needed to fill out. It was a good sign, and from there I took a deep breath. Since there was food on the table next to the receptionist area, I grabbed a donut and drank while I waited. There were several candidates there as well. The whole time I pondered how blessed I was to have God's favor over my life. I completed all of the paperwork that was required to work through the employment agency. The recruiter said that she would be in contact with me in a few days. I replied, thank you, and gave her a firm handshake. At the end of the day, I could only fight with myself if I had not planted any seeds of faith. As the Bible says, faith without works is dead. The next morning, while lying in bed, I received a phone call from the recruiter regarding 2 positions that she was considering me for. Then I stood up in bed. I arranged to interview with the one that described the contract duties. However, it was a temp to permanent position. I felt that having contracts experience in my background paved the way for new doors of opportunities. I prepared myself for the interview. While driving there, I purposely took the scenic route. I wanted to look at nature as I prayed for the opportunity. No one knew the emotions that were pent inside my mind and heart. All of my hopes and dreams were pending based on my faith. I trusted that my life was in divine order by appreciating the many blessings that were evident in my life thus far. I had my health, my kids were fine, and I knew that God was somewhere in the midst. The interview went well, and I felt optimistic. Therefore, I decided to go for a nice walk afterward. I loved being outside, listening to the birds. while listening to the children playing and watching butterflies fly near me. I believe that I inherited the trait of walking outdoors, close to nature from my daddy and granddaddy, while growing up in the rural of Alabama and Michigan. I believe that God's warmth from the sunshine sends healing to the soul. There was nothing more that I could do about my circumstances but to wait and enjoy the ride to where God was taking me. It was going on a week since the last time I spoke to the rental consultant for the apartment. I called and left a voicemail one afternoon. While falling asleep, I saw a vision of myself speaking to the woman at the new apartment. It was mine, and that's all I remembered. As I recollect a few days later, I received a call that I had the apartment. I was knocked off my feet. I danced and praised God for hearing my cry. Some days later, I also received a call from the hiring manager offering me the contract's position. I felt amazed and in awe of how things were falling into place. I know the power of prayer. I was trained at an early age to pray and fast if I wanted God to move in my life. I moved into my new apartment on the last Saturday of July 2007. I started work on the following Monday. Simultaneously, things were happening one by one, and I had no time to waste. I moved quickly in order to have electricity and phone service at the new place. Emery, Jacob, and his 6 friends helped me move. On my first day of work, I was asked about working overtime. When I was presented with working overtime, at first I wanted to decline, but I quickly changed my mind when I thought about how long I had to live on a shoestring budget. Therefore, I agreed to work an extra hour a day, Monday through Friday. The money was more than I had made while working at World USA. It felt strange coming to work at my new job. The temporary staffing service on the first floor was one of the agencies that I had enlisted with and sought for work months ago. I suppose it really isn't strange because my steps are already ordered. Since moving closer to Emory, it cut down on the travel time. We were able to see each other frequently throughout the week, but there were many things going on in my mind. I left my old apartment a month early before the lease ended. I was able to find the money I needed to move. I was able to have Emory on my side and Savannah as a friend. My friendship with Savannah has never changed, a warm spirit that I know who genuinely cares for others. We enjoyed talking for hours in the past about our life and spiritual things. It bonded our friendship, I believe. I am proud to call her my sister in Christ. I received the rest of what I needed by arranging a deal with Saul. I agreed for Saul to live out the remainder of my lease. While living at my old apartment, he applied to sublease it, but it was denied. Therefore, he tried applying on his own. He was hoping that things would work out for Jacob there. But for some time since our divorce, he desired to have Jacob live with him. I had mixed feelings about it. I asked Jacob how did he feel, and he replied it did not matter to him. My thoughts were that he had grown attached to his friends and had lived there for the past 4 years. He was a teenager and involved in sports. He became popular after winning many ribbons for running, track, and jumping the hurdles. His name was getting around, and the school acknowledged him for exhibiting good character. I did not want to uproot him, like my grandparents did with me when I was a teenager. Saul was denied the apartment, and time was running out, although in my heart I knew that he was trying to be a good father to our son. We both had different parenting styles. I did not mind Jacob living with him. I just wanted him to be stable. Saul came up with another plan. He asked his girlfriend to apply for the apartment. I was not too concerned either way because I knew I had a stable place for Jacob to live. While adjusting to the relocation and a new job, a new supervisor was hired. I was sitting at my desk working. It was at the end of the day when she walked over to my desk to introduce herself. First of all, she was an African American. Her pitch was loud as it matched her height and stature. She informed me that she had heard a lot of nice things about me. Her remarks were that she's the type of manager that rewarded her employees for their hard work, especially the ones that stood out. As I remember, she said that some people are gifted visionaries and they can see how to accomplish things. I listened intently as she was speaking. because I liked her words. It's not typical to meet a manager for the first time speaking that way. I politely smiled at her as I stopped working. When she walked away from my desk to meet the other co-workers, I wondered about her background and whether she was a Christian. Then other thoughts creeped into my mind about the past. Sometimes people are hired for the position for other reasons that have nothing to do with being qualified for the position. When that happens, there is an ulterior motive or price. When I first started working in corporate America, I was in my early 20s. I learned a valuable lesson. It was impossible to be friends with my supervisor and remain working under the direction of being supervised. I can never forget the experience I had when I was hired for a position that I felt qualified for. It was not the real reason why I got the position. My supervisor hired me because I reminded her of her daughter. She bonded with me and took me under her wings on the job by sharing some personal things with me and could see that I was loyal, young, and naive. I would sit and listen to her talk about whatever she wished. Sometimes we would go to another part of the building that did not allow smoking and she would have a cigarette. At the time, I was too young to have any wisdom around the matter. I was her sounding board. She didn't give me that much work, and the perks were nice. She started to be mean to me when I wanted to make friends my age on the job. I didn't like the control or power she had over me. When I realized that I could avoid some of the stress by getting more involved with my work, there was another problem because she delegated the work to me. There was a price to pay for my actions when I no longer wanted to be friends with my supervisor. The games started, besides the manipulation, the power trip and control. Somehow I didn't know how to draw the line on keeping things professional because it was my first corporate job. Suddenly, I stopped daydreaming about the past and declared that I am on a mission with a purpose, and this time I plan to be conscientious about the line and keep things professional. I wanted this opportunity to remain professional. Saul's time had run out at living in the apartment because my lease expired. It was time to turn in the keys. I was happy that we were able to handle the matter without any drama or issues. When Jacob started school, that's when I became more concerned about how things were going to work. I needed to know Saul's plans at this point. He agreed to drive Jacob to one of his friend's house on his way to work in the mornings and pick him up in the evenings. At the time, he was living at his girlfriend's. The commute was 20 minutes away, and I knew that this was not going to go on for long. He said this was temporary until he could find another apartment in the community. However, I remained in contact with Jacob by calling him on his cell every day to see if there was any progress. I was not comfortable with how Saul manipulated the situation concerning Jacob. I wanted things to work out, but I became very impatient when Jacob was left over his friend's house for a few days during the week. My life was stable, but I couldn't stop worrying about Jacob. I started investigating the matter closely by driving out to meet the family where he was staying. They were from Asia and seemed to speak little English. The son translated the communication for them. He was fond of Jacob and said that he could live with him and his family for free. I told him that it wasn't legal the way things were being handled, and it was kind of them, but I was responsible in how the situation was resolved. Meanwhile, the pressure was on me to stay on Saul to get it together. He was acting like his old self again, speaking nonsense and trying to be nonchalant about the situation and to let him handle it. I wanted to, but I explained the ramification of the possibilities by giving him different scenarios about Jacob's safety and care. I couldn't sleep at night wondering what could happen to my parenting rights if something were to happen to my son. Since I was not at peace, I went to Jacob's school to ask for a transfer. I followed the procedure to withdraw him out of school. The school expressed how they were going to miss him, and they gave me a certificate that the principal honored Jacob for modeling good character. When he made it home that day, Jacob put his bags down on the living room floor. I asked him if he was hungry, and he said yes. We left out to get something to eat. While we were eating Kentucky Fried Chicken, I looked into his eyes as I lost my appetite and asked him to express to me what he was feeling. His response was pleasant, but the look in his eyes puzzled me. I started reliving the times when I was terribly unhappy as a child. I felt isolated, uprooted, lonely, sad, emotional, and angry. On our way back home, I noticed that Jacob was quiet in the car. I started to wonder if I was doing the right thing. I decided to spend a little time in my bedroom because I was confused. I started crying and praying to God to help me. I wanted my son to be happy and to enjoy his childhood, but somehow I felt worse. I went back into the living room to talk to Jacob again. He opened up and expressed his feelings, and immediately I broke down and cried again. I could see that his spirit was down and there was no joy in his eyes. Meanwhile, Saul was blowing my cell phone up by calling several times and leaving nasty voicemails. I ignored him and felt that he was no longer going to bully me. I gave him a chance to do the right thing and nothing happened. Therefore, I took back my power. I thought that the drama with him was over. I was in a different place mentally and spiritually. I couldn't believe that I was dealing with this kind of issue because we were divorced and at the time the kids were separated between us. He wanted to raise JR, and I still had some more years in raising Jacob. The Lord knew that I did not know what to do. I talked to Emery about the matter, and he gave me his opinion and the mistakes that happened in his life that were similar to mine. I was still unsure about what to do in the matter. However, he did encourage me to take it to court if I had to. The next move I made, I called my oldest son, JR, who was away at college. I explained the situation and how hard it was for me to let his father handle the matter. I was startled by the words of wisdom that was coming from his mouth. I heard things that I thought I would never hear. He did not side with me or his father. He only wanted Jacob to be happy, and ultimately, that is what we all wanted. My heart was overwhelmed as I struggled with the pain. While I faced the situation head on, I trusted God to watch over Jacob and decided to place him back into the care of his father. It did not matter what type of issues I had with Saul in the past concerning his alcohol and drug use. He was on a new path and working through his sobriety. I had flashbacks that stirred up emotions when I experienced a similar situation as a child. My parents were fighting, arguing, and both parents were mentally and financially unstable to care for me. But today I counted myself blessed and considered myself destined with a purpose to have survived the rage of my past. I had the same faith in believing that I was going to overcome it. I prayed that same prayer of faith over Jacob's life. I only had a few days to resolve the matter before Jacob started his new school the following Monday. As I analyzed the matter, I looked far ahead, concluding that my choice could either ruin my son's high self-esteem by uprooting him and creating chaos, or I should allow him to walk the path that he wanted. I did not want to give him away or ignore his feelings like how my parents treated me. Jacob felt my sorrow and how much I loved him. He only wanted things to be peaceful, so I granted him the choice. I admit there was a deeper bond that I had while breastfeeding him at birth. Somehow I believed that God was working in the midst of all the confusion. The next morning, while at work, I realized that I needed to go back to court to have things settled legally. The following morning was on a Friday when I caught the 6 a.m. metro train to downtown Chicago. I filed a motion in court to allow Jacob to live with his father. I was given a court date to appear in court 2 weeks later. Later that evening, Saul was approved for an apartment in the community a few blocks away from Jacob's school. I had Jacob pack his bags so I could drop him off at Saul's. I went back to his school with the court papers and enrolled him back into school. It was a trying time for me. Talking about stress. After all the running around and having no sleep for 3 days, my body and mind were both exhausted. I believed that I had made the right choice because Jacob was happy again. He was back in school and doing well. Saul and I were able to work through the matter, and we mutually agreed with the document that I presented to the court regarding custody and support for Jacob. He apologized for the mean things he said to me. Therefore, I was at peace and thankful that God stepped in on time to help me through a difficult situation. Some custody battles could take years and tons of money that could be used elsewhere, that is, taking trips, college fund, etc. Again, it was another sign that God was on my side. Sometimes things do not always fall into place smoothly, but somehow when I prayed, it all seemed to come together for my good. Romans chapter 8, verse 28. Things were being moved out of my way and the crooked paths were starting to go straight. I always refer to it as divine order. It takes time to change your life. I was able to see step by step that I was getting closer to having the life I dreamed of. A while back during the summer, I had contacted a couple of freelance editors that were referrals. I found it interesting when I had had a conversation with the prospective editors. They were both two African American women. I presumed that's what I needed at first. I thought that if I worked with someone that knew my culture and understood my plight as an African American woman, it would make the editing task that much easier to understand. However, I answered their questions about my manuscript. I was able to give a briefing on the things that I had done up to the point. I highlighted the experience that I had with Vision magazine, the TV appearances, and my speaking engagements. As I exuded passion about my reasoning for writing the book and why it was so important that I got it published, I did not feel that there was a connection. There was no point in trying to convince people about my vision. Previously, I had sent out some query letters, but had not received an acceptance letter from a publisher. Again, since the door was not opening, I felt a prompting in my intuition that God was commissioning me to step out of the traditional and into the non-traditional. Therefore, I knew that it was time to move forward. As I continued to sow seeds into the lives of others, I was learning how powerful prayer is. I smiled because my faith has shown me that all things are possible with God.